Have you ever just walked into a space? Like, and this is another question. Think about that. Like, what do you do when you walk into a space and you just know it's off, but you don't really know why? Does that happen to you? And you're just like,
oh yeah. I remember like this, we're going back decades when Alan and I were looking at our first apartment together. And there was one at the top of this house, and we walked up the stairs and opened the door, and I went in and I went, nope. I turned around and I started down the stairs, and Alan said, what is it? And I said, no, we're not living there.
I've seen this in a horror movie before, and those people stayed, and that did not turn out well.
Yeah, and I was like, no, it's not happening.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I love that. Like bad mojo. And we shoot in a place, we film in a place called Riverview. Riverview, which is an old abandoned psychiatric hospital that a lot of people film in. Parts of it are still active, but one of the main buildings that we shoot in is called the Crease Clinic. And it's because Dr. Crease did a lot of work with electroshock therapy in this building. And it's a huge building. And there are places in that building that just don't feel right.
Is that Riley?
She's like, pay attention. Who are you talking to?
Make me more treats.
So
yeah, wants you to... where are my treats, Ludi?
Yeah.
You're talking about making them.
It's so cute. It's the sweetest little mom.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so where you're shooting, so has that impacted you? Do you have a hard time if you're in spaces that feel that kind of bad or negative energy, like, and you have to be in it? How do you deal with that when you have to leave that space? Like,
I have to protect myself going into those spaces, like sort of cover my solar plexus, and I have to, I just, because I feel, and I'm not like an empath. I'm not saying that I pick up on, people who have passed, but I feel like I am the type of person that if I see somebody suffering, or it really hits me. And so when I go into places where I feel like there's been suffering, or you feel this negative energy, I just, And because my eldest brother spent time in a psychiatric hospital, it's a big trigger for me. Yeah. And so I have to be super careful when I go into those places to just focus on the work and not think about, where I am necessarily, which is not a great way to live life, but it's only there. It's the only place where I feel really triggered. So I just have to be aware of it. I have to walk into the space going, I know that this is a space that can upset me. So I just.
I mean, that's, whatever walls you got to throw up to get through something like that too. I did that a ton in EMS too. Just like, okay, let me put myself in this like metal box and walk into this situation. So
Wow. Rebecca, of course you do.
It's interesting, and it's hard because then you're like, I want to process, what I'm feeling, but you have to do the job in the space. And then, hopefully you take time for yourself. We're going back into the mental health talk, but hopefully you take time for yourself afterwards to think about it, So
do you have, like, when you're working, are there counselors to talk to you guys? Because you must see some pretty awful things.
Oh yeah. We have a peer support group, and then there's also counselors. So anytime something bad happens and everybody knows about it, they will activate that peer support group no matter what, and people will get checked in on whether they ask for it or not. And then as it progresses, then they can determine, like, do they need to talk to somebody else or like go further with it and things like that. So there are systems in place for sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Like, when I see a fender bender, I get upset. I'm like, those poor people.
It's weird though, because when you do box it up, you kind of don't think about it the same way, and all of a sudden I'll find myself starting to tell a story to people who I'm like, oh, I need to not be telling you this story, like, because I just don't think about it that same way. It's really weird.
Or suddenly you're crying for no reason.
Yep. Done that. Yep.
Yeah. Which, and again, it's important to acknowledge. Well, hi.
She just wants all the attentions.
Mom. I saw a woman the other day that reminded me of my mom. What I imagine my mom would be like now, or a couple years from now. She had the same coat that my mom had, this little puffy coat, and she was walking across the street with a walker, and I was just like in my car, just going, oh God, that if my mom were still alive, that might be her. And all these little moments, right? These
Yeah.
little moments throughout the day that we deflect. We spend a lot of time in our day deflecting, right? I don't want to
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. I don't have the energy or the time to deal with this, and I've got to get from point A to point B and whatever I've got to do. So, but then I think it's really important at the end of the day or whenever you have the chance to just sort of reflect on it and then let it go with a sense of peace rather than betting, like I've talked about before, where I feel like Riley, like I feel like we, especially as women, and I'm not saying men don't do this as well, but I think for women, I can speak from that experience. We let things embed in our flesh.
Yeah.
And we talked about this in the mental health podcast, but the shitty things that people have said and or things that have happened, and we let it embed, and then we end up walking around super heavy. Like I feel like I'm so heavy sometimes, and I've started now in the last few years to like pull the pieces of shrapnel out, take a look at them, and go, yeah, I don't need you anymore. Like you're not.
That's fantastic.
And so I think that's important too, that we sort of go, oh man, that's why my neck is so, because of this shitty thing that happened. That.
Yeah.
And again, I think, not to sort of take it away from the holistic DIY stuff, but all of that helps me, making the fireside or making it, like doing things that I think are good for me.
Yeah.
Is all part of taking care of our mental health as well.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to ask, like, it sounds like that's just like a way of grounding yourself, making sure when you are back in your space, you are grounded and you have
100%.
a safe space. And I think that's where I hope people listening kind of get that idea of like, if you don't feel like you have your safe space in your home or in your place, like what are things you could do to start? How are ways? Because like we do encounter these things where we do have to put up these shields around ourselves but we have to take care of ourselves too. And that can be hard, but whether it is the DIY or if it's scents and aromas and making sure you have the right candles and like
Just about to say
smell.
that.